How do? How are we going? Welcome new subscribers. Those that are new to the channel, very brief introduction who I am. My name's Neil Samworth, Neil Sam Samworth, preferred to be called Sam. My mum and my nan, bless them, yeah, both call me Sam. I've worked all my life, first 23 years, lived in Sheffield, Steel City, worked in engineering, worked in some very strange places, hard graft, long shifts, long hours, dirty, and some very dangerous jobs. At a bit of a loss round about the millennium, I moved to Salford and Manchester, worked in a private sector prison and then a public prison. Today, somebody's come into my head, characterizations. We're going to talk about someone today and about never judging a book by its cover. This lad is probably the best example, or one of them, I ever came across as a prison officer. Phil. So first contact with Phil. I'm on the healthcare on the ED, evening duty. There's me and a nurse on shift and a healthcare assistant. What would happen if we were getting somebody from reception? Perhaps someone was unwell, the worst detoxes, alcohol, drugs, etc., or someone was behaving strangely. We will get a phone call from reception that we were getting one. No phone call. Here's the gate, go on the landing. I comes out onto the landing. The gate's shut. Can't see anyone. Goes down the landing. There's a lad. Yeah, he's stood at a cell door. He's dropped the hatch. The hatches in healthcare on the cell doors were so you wouldn't necessarily have to unlock people to serve the meals. You could speak to people through the hatch. And, you know, they were a safety feature in a way because we had some very dangerous people. Anyway, he has dropped hatch and he stood talking. So, excuse me, who are you? Blanks me. Said to the nurse, give reception a call, ask who this is. Yeah. So this lad is aggressive straight away, full on, ignoring me. He's on one. He's not only on one, he's on something. I can see it. You know, I don't have to be brain of Britain. This lad is or has taken something. Manages to get him in the office. The protocol was, you know, the nurse would do a brief interview and we would decide where we're going to place him. We had two cells on healthcare, two types of cells, a normal prison cell, and we had a safer custody cell. That is a safer cell. It's not anti-ligature, anti-suicide. There's no such thing. You know, during my time on the healthcare, in the anti-ligature cells, as people used to call them, must have had 30 people try and hang themselves and that. You know, people are always thinking there's a way, or if there's a will, there's a way. So gets him in the office. Now, this lad is obsessed with a phone call. Apparently, he's been quite disruptive in reception, offering violence. So 5 lads have brought him up. They dropped him on the healthcare at the gate. Again, procedurally, them lads should have come to the office, said who he was, and waited till we decided what we were doing, i.e. putting him in a cell. They didn't do that. They just left him on a landing. So 5 reception lads to walk him to the healthcare, you know, for safety, and then they drop him on the landing and get off. However, being from Yorkshire, strong in arm, thick in head, and having good communication skills, that weren't a problem. I were worth 5 reception officers anyway. People go mad when you say things like that. You know, I was a confident person. I could talk to people. This lad was on one. He was in the office wanting the phone. The phone in the office, yeah, was for staff use, not prisoner use. There was a phone on the landing. He said to me, so even though he's off his head, he's on one. He says, I'll use that phone. I says, you're not using that phone. One, you haven't got a PIN. So we can't facilitate it. Anyway, he was obsessed. It turns out that reception actually told him to get him from reception to the healthcare that we give him a phone call, knowing full well we wouldn't. Protocol in reception, you get a chance to phone somebody once when you are admitted to the prison. If that phone is engaged or nobody answers, that's it. Your chance is gone. Sometimes the next day you could take him down to reception and facilitate that call. But that's it. You get one go, one chance. He's obsessed. Anyway, the nurse is behind the desk. Yeah, this lad is sat, and I have positioned myself between the nurse and Phil. And he's on one. I'm thinking he's going to kick off. There is an alarm bell at the side. The nurse was looking at that, looking at me. She was a lovely lass. She was switched on herself. You know, so between us, we de-escalated the situation. I actually got my baton out. Yep. Extendable baton, and put it on the desk. So he says, "What's that for?" I said, it's just a precaution. He says, "A precaution for what?" I says, "If you kick off." Obviously, I'm on my own with this nurse. I don't want her getting hurt. You appear to have taken something. Could possibly be a handful. So that's why it's there. So he says, "Are you going to use that?" I says, "No, I don't want to use that." That's how the conversation went. Anyway, managed to talk him into a cell on the promise that I would make a phone call to his missus. I had no problem doing that. As a prison officer, I had my own PIN. I had access to the prison phone. We were all given PINs, so your calls could be monitored, because certain individuals use the prison phone system to phone relatives in far-off lands like Australia. And the governor weren't happy when he got a massive bill. So I phoned his missus. I spoke to her. She didn't know he was in prison. She suspected he was in prison. I assured her he was all right and we'd look after him. And I went back to him and assured him that his missus was all right. So, Phil, I'll tell you what he's in for. After 3 times he'd been in prison. Now, this lad, the second reason why I should never judge a book, he didn't look anything. He was obviously a scrapper and an handy lad. He had an addiction to benzodiazapenes. Benzos, for me, the worst detox. Horrendous. Way worse than heroin. Way worse than alcohol. Shocking. You know, these are tablets that in the 60s and 70s doctors were giving out like sweets to people. Highly addictive, and coming off them is shocking. So he was very violent, or shall I say, prone to violent outbursts. We never had to restrain Phil. He was with us about 8 months before he went to a mental health unit. He'd obviously got problems. Me, thinking about it, his addiction, how he talked about his past, I think as a kid he was definitely abused, whether that was physical, sexual, or whatever. I had a very good understanding. Quite often these lads who are difficult, I get on well with. You know, birds of a feather and all that. Like I said, we never had to restrain him, but he would kick off or put him behind his door. People were scared of him. You know, when his physicality, when he erupted, the violence, the language, you could see people were scared. And rightly so. You know, never, ever judge a book. I've said that a few times today, haven't I? Anyway, what was he in for, Phil? Have you guessed? 3 prison centres for assaulting and beating sex offenders, paedophiles. I didn't know his offences when he first come in healthcare. When I looked into it and he spoke to me, you know, I had a certain respect for that lad. Am I advocating violence? No, I'm not. However, there's some people in this world I have no tolerance for. People who hurt women and kids, my tolerance is gone now. One of the lads he beat was a well-known criminal, been coming in Strangeways a long time. A very handy lad himself, a proper handful, in fact. You know, when he kicked off, 10 officers to restrain him, that sort of thing. I never suspected that lad was a sex offender, a nonce, not on normal court exercise, acronym, or Scotland Yard, not of normal criminal element. I never suspected he nonce, but when I looked, because, you know, he got the better of me thinking about it. Yeah, he was. He'd been on a rape charge at some point. I didn't know that. Probably nobody did, because he used to be on normal location and he was one of the boys. So, Phil, yeah, Andy lad, probably abused as a kid. He went to a mental health facility. I don't know what happened to him. I never saw him after that. But, you know, he was a character. Very intimidating, very threatening, and obviously a lot going on in his mind. I hope, you know, if he's around now, that he is in a good place, a better place. Like I said, you might not understand that respect, but somebody, you know, who batters people, who harm women and children, then I've got to go along with that now. I'm just going to leave it there, guys. I wasn't intending vlogging about Phil, but now and again, these things come to be heard. Made me smile as well, because we had a lot of laughs with him. And he was always apologising. He would apologise to the managers. Miss Bradbury, I'm sorry. Miss Kenny, I'm sorry. You know, people understand benzodiazepines. Horrendous. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks to my Patreons. Thanks to people who bought me a brew. And thanks to guests, past, present and future. I'll see you there.